Hey, welcome everyone. I'm JTXRP. I've got Fred here with us, and I'm just for your last name, it's Rispoli, right?
Good job. That's
Oh
it.
yes, 1 in a million, and I got it finally. All right, I'm usually butchering everyone, unfortunately, but he's here tonight to answer some questions for us. And 1 second, but yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on there. Let me go ahead and mute this tab so I can listen to us and not be distracted in my earphones at the same time. Sorry about that. All right, so we got some people in here. We got, speaking of butchering names, it's Kalaladin. Not going to get that right. I apologize, speaking of butchering names. But we're here tonight to ask you some questions, Fred, and I'm very interested to know what's going on with all these different cases. And I'm also, of course, giving away, as you know, a Zoj giveaway, which we'll talk about more towards the middle of the video. So if you're going to put your answers in, just wait. I will give some responses here in about 30 I'll allow some responses in about 30 minutes. And if no one gets it, I will give a hint, and then we'll wait a little while longer. And maybe you guys can go do some Googling, and I'll give another opportunity here in a bit. But there's a ton going on in the crypto space, as we know, with all the different regulations and what's a security, what's not, what's a commodity. You know, are we going to have this new organization possibly that is going to regulate crypto as opposed to the SEC or whatever else? And yeah, there's tons of questions that the community has all the time because everything's changing all the time. And even Fred before the live stream tonight was telling me a few things about some things that I'm not aware of. So I'm very interested to hear his thoughts. And if you guys have questions, just go ahead and place them in the chat. Without further ado, Fred, welcome, and thank you for coming and hosting to the channel.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me. Hey, I'm sometimes looking over at my phone, and some people on Twitter are like, where can we go to ask questions? If I just copy and paste this link and reply, is that how they get there?
Yeah, they'll just go into their chat, or I will actually be starting off with any questions they had on Twitter, which I don't know if I saw any, but I will go ahead and double click. Nope, there weren't any on the Twitter post. So they can just put them in the inside the YouTube chat, and we should be good to go.
Oh, okay. You start. What questions do you want to ask? You want me to introduce myself, get a little intro, whatever you want to do, JT?
Well, yeah, there's some there are some slightly more well-known names in the kind of the lawyer space, and you broke onto the scene again with a class action suit, from my understanding, against some players. I'm not sure if I should name them or not, but maybe if you want to, you can. And again, I don't know what legal trouble I can get into here, so I don't know what lines I need to cross. But you did something that we were all hoping somebody would do, and we're wondering why it wasn't being done. And a lot of us didn't really know how to do it or to get there. And explain us to a little bit more about how you came on the scene, what that lawsuit was, and maybe why it resulted in the way that it did.
Sure. So what you're talking about is the lawsuit against Jay Clayton and Bill Hinman.
Yeah.
That was filed on April 11th, and it was withdrawn. That was a Monday, and it was withdrawn that Friday to be filed at a later date. If anybody's interested in potentially joining that class action, it's a pinned tweet on my Twitter handle at Freddie Riz. You just click on the lawsuit, XRPLawsuits.com. It's plural because there's a couple more coming up that are in the works. But what, and I've tweeted about this, so if you go through my feed, you could probably find some things. But you know, what broke the camel's back for me, I had just started kind of commenting, very much inspired by seeing John and Jeremy, you know, kind of post commentary on there. And so I had started commenting, you know, I'm a little more caustic, may be the right word. So I like to go at it a little bit harder than maybe those two do. I sue in my normal lawyer job. I sue government institutions all the time. I sue huge corporations all the time. I know how terrible they are and how much they just don't give a you-know-what about the ordinary person. So yeah. I don't really hold back as much as maybe some other lawyers do, and maybe that's a wise decision. It's just hard with my personality, and it's gotten me into trouble before.
I feel you.
Yeah, so I filed that lawsuit mainly when the first, because now we're on like round 2 or 3. The first set of Hinman incriminating emails came out the Friday before. I was thinking about it for a while, and then when I saw the emails released about, just, hey, this is all a raging conflict, Bill. You really shouldn't do it. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm still gonna do it. It just got me so crazy that I had a lot of people come up to me as well that knew I was in crypto and said, why doesn't anybody sue these guys? So I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But the long story short, it was done intentionally not to mess with the SEC Ripple case in any way, shape, or form. But there was a lot of pressure that came down on me. Some of the most intense pressure I've ever had as a lawyer from a lot of bad guys out there. I don't know how true everything was that was kind of conveyed to me. But then I also heard from a lot of the good guys, saying, hey, listen, let's hold off because there's going to be a lot more terrible, incriminating stuff that's coming down the pike. And let's really make sure we've got everything locked and loaded and ready to go. And so I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, appreciate the collaboration that you've had with, the good guys in the space, and your willingness to, even just take that step, even just to be told to hold off is really awesome. And I can relate with, even though I'm live, I have a habit of sticking my foot in my mouth. So if anyone hears anything, I'm sorry ahead of time. But you have obviously the legal background and experience to make those things happen. And I just want to say thank you from the community for just doing what we were all wondering why it wasn't done, even if it was just for the betterment of what was going on in the space, just to hold off. We know that you're ready with your finger on the trigger, as I'm sure a few other people are, to be able to participate in that. So thank you on behalf of the community.
Oh, no worries. And it is coming. It just gets worse and worse each passing day for those two. It's not, again, I won't go into it. I did a long interview on XRP Army News if anybody wants to watch that long thing that really breaks it down. But it is a tough claim. It's hard to win that. It's going to be hard for John Deaton to get far in the SEC case just because there's a lot of immunity that's built in to suing the government. And so, but that's also what they said when he filed a motion to intervene on behalf of XRP holders. That also is incredibly difficult. No one's ever done it that way before. And so, it's just not worth giving up and saying, well, because no one's done it before, we're not going to try.
Right. I appreciate that. And yeah, for sure. We do have some questions coming in here. I always have a ton, but I always want to make sure that I give the people that show up priority. And I don't know what someone asked here. It says, where were you, Fred? I don't know if that's an inside joke, but do you know what that's about?
I don't know. Maybe that it took me a little while. I've been watching the case. I got into cryptocurrency January of 2018. So not quite at the high, but I think I bought my first XRP when it was $1. And so, obviously in the last year, depending on what day it was, you're like $1 back then. It was so good, when it was hovering around $1.50. Now we're at 40 something cents, and it's like, oh, that was a loss. But I averaged in all the way down during that time period. I've been buying more ever since it started going into the 50s. Still can't quite nail the low, but I just got really into it then. A couple other companies that I follow and other digital assets I'm invested in. And I just started getting really more and more into it, decided that's actually where I wanted to go with my law practice. I do elder abuse and med mal right now, where I help injured people, really get some type of relief for what they went through. It's tough to do that. It's been kind of wearing on me a little bit, and it's just so much more fun and exciting to be in the crypto world. So I'm still doing a little of that, but I am moving over onto the crypto side and got a lot of interesting things in store over the next couple of weeks to a month. But that's where I was. That's where I've been.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear you have the experience, against the government kind of deal. Not that, I don't want to preach anything against the government, but we know that some things need to get cleaned up, obviously. And it's good to know that you're there to help apply that pressure. And that's where you've been. So it answers that question, and that's a good way to take it, because I was like, what? But I hope that answered your question, whoever's watching. And if it didn't, then clarify down below, and we'll answer it again. Next one is from Run. What is Fred's realistic price prediction if Ripple XRP wins the lawsuit? And again, guys, none of this is financial advice, but always do your own research. And yeah, but go ahead.
All right. So, I mean, my prediction is as good as anybody else's, but here is the tricky thing with where XRP can go or can be allowed to go. It's that if XRP, so I would personally think that with a lawsuit settlement, and you've heard it before with other people, I mean, I think it can go up, a settlement or a win, it can go up a few dollars overnight. And I don't think it's ridiculous in the abstract for it to get to $10. I don't think it's ridiculous to get to $20. The problem with that is that we know how hard the government has come down on XRP in general and on Ripple Labs in particular to suppress the price. If you think about it, a $10 XRP price, I think Ripple has between the escrow and what they just have outside of escrow, like right around 50 billion XRP. So if it goes to $10, then all of a sudden Ripple has control of $500 billion US worth of XRP. And so now they've just become, I should have brought this, I was thinking about it, I forgot to bring it up, but I don't know where that falls into like the scheme of companies, but I'm imagining it's like top 10, maybe top 15 of all companies. They go from, where are they now? 12 billion, maybe 20 billion to 500 billion, within a couple of weeks, if it goes up to 10. That's, that would make the government nervous. Or if nervous isn't the right word, it would make a lot of powerful regulators pay attention. So I think that's a big problem, and or not a problem, but a big hurdle, is that all of a sudden this company is $500 billion overnight. Now, there's been other cryptos that have kind of done that. It's never gone up that high, so we're not, because there's so many XRP created, it's at the 100 billion level. I guess I'm not versed enough. How many Luna billionaires were there? We all know Ethereum's disguised whales. We don't quite know how much consensus has. But even, I'll pull it up in a second, but I don't know what the market, Bitcoin's not at $1 trillion anymore. So nobody's really been in that situation where a known company, especially one that wants to go public, is all of a sudden so valuable so quickly. So I don't see why the mechanics couldn't get it to $10 if there is a win in the lawsuit. But I just feel like there's going to be some funny business with regulators if that wouldn't let it go up that fast. Or there's got to be some mechanism where the government gets enough people get their cut for that to happen.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I think that there are several different factors that could help XRP this year. I've talked about them. I'm going to be talking about them on my YXRP series that I'm doing. The Flare network, I believe, is going to have a major impact on XRP. There's, I'm going blank. I have like a whole board set out of different things that of whys, but just the case alone is such a huge factor. And now that you're talking about it, I can totally see where there is and there has to be some outcome where it's a win and a loss. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Somehow that that doesn't let the price go as high as it possibly could. I don't know what that is, but now that you're talking about it, if price spiked to that high and had that effect, how changing would that be for the entire market? And right now, we're talking about, you're talking about $10. Well, we're still hanging at 40 cents and the whole market just tanked, right?
Yeah.
Where we're currently at, down 40, 50, 60% in some cases. XRP was already kind of hanging down there, and I'm surprised it's hung on as much as it has. That's actually encouraged me a lot, actually. I'm like, not as many people are selling as I thought. Anyways,
I do think it could go to, a couple bucks, $3 in the next over a day or two with a solid settlement or a solid win. I don't think that immediately. I mean, again, Ripple would go up in value tremendously, the company, because of the XRP they either sit on and control. So I don't think the hurdle gets there. But when you start going a little bit higher, that's when people start, getting a little, the powers that be are like, wow, this company just, is getting real close to $1 trillion and it's not even really doing anything. It's just the XRP they sit on and control. So there's been some theories about there. Is the XRP and ESCO pre-allocated? I just haven't seen anything from Ripple to indicate that that would be true the way they keep, or sell. Lately, it seems like it's been between like 100 to 200 million XRP, and they put the rest back in escrow. Legally, there's got to be a lot of agreements. Like, you're not going to pre-allocate something like with a wink and a nod to somebody. I mean, I guess you could, but it would be so, unorthodox. If the IMF were getting a piece, these huge banks were getting a piece, they could have agreements that say, we've got these options to get it. But there would have to be, that written agreement. And, it's completely within the realm of possibility that they're holding on to those agreements, on the side, and they get triggered if there's a ruling on the security status. So, I mean, it's totally possible, but nothing's jumped out at me that there's any pre-allocation. So right now it's all that XRP and escrow is Ripples. There's got to be something that deals with where it goes and who gets control of that, I think, for it to really take off.
Yep, we'll see. Let's move on to the next question here. And so if Ripple moves Ripple moves the company out of the US, can the SEC stop any exchanges to list XRP?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the SEC can do whatever it wants to any country. Well, I'll rephrase. The SEC can try to do whatever it wants to anybody out of the US. Does it succeed or not? So, they can. You saw it with Do Kwon and Luna. They subpoenaed him, or they served him on stage at some conference a couple months ago. He's saying, hey, I was a foreign national. Procedurally, this doesn't work. I think, I didn't verify, but I think I saw on Twitter that that the court said, nope, you could serve him. You got served. So they're going to try and bring him in. They can come up. It's called long arm jurisdiction. That's the legal terminology. And it's basically, if a court is going to decide and the SEC puts up enough facts to say anybody outside of the country had enough, it's called minimal contacts with in the US, in the jurisdiction, they basically surrendered their jurisdiction to the US and now they can come in. And so that's why you see a lot of international companies get sued in the US, because an attorney will this international company has a lot of funds to, pay and compensate my clients. I'm going to try, if I tried to sue them in their home country, all that company has to do is call the judge or the president and be like, get rid of this, and it's gone. There's still some of that in America, sadly, but it's not nearly as easy to do. And so even if Ripple moves outside, the SEC can still make life for XRP really difficult if it's deemed to be a security in the US, even if it's completely fine outside of the US.
Wow. Well, the US just needs to get its head together, because it seems like everyone is moving faster than us on this, and I just don't understand why we're lagging behind so bad. If there's got to be something behind the scenes we just don't see.
But I think, real quick, I just think that issue is that XRP, to some extent threatens the US dollar, because if you are going to be able to move money instantly and you don't need to rely on a reserve currency, you're hurting the US dollar. And that is one reason why, we in the US have such a higher standard of living. A fake higher standard is because we force people to use our dollar. It's nice for my lifestyle and for your lifestyle, but we have to. U.S. citizens should really recognize that we're sitting on a privilege that we're not really being good stewards of. Not to say a lot of other countries aren't being good stewards of their money either, but it would go a lot more to a level playing field, as everybody likes to say, if it didn't matter what anybody's currency was, because you could move in and out of value so quickly, which is what XRP is trying to do. And so unless, I just kind of think that unless all the big boys and girls are plugged into the XRP system, it's hard, and it could all be for show. I don't discount that possibility with this lawsuit. I lean against it, but it's just, you know, if you're going to hammer the US dollar like that, everybody's got to be on board with, you know, a cross-border payment mechanism, or with XRP specifically, you know, in order for that to happen relatively smoothly without tanks and guns and war.
Yeah. And we all prefer smoothly over the latter of what you just said. So let's move on to Eric here on the note of tanks, guns, and war. So the dates for summary judgment are locked in by November, but apparently his gut feeling is that the judge does not rule on the fair notice by the spring of 2023. Can and how does the SEC push this issue of fair notice even further away?
So when summary judgment is filed, there's going to be a lot of different points in that summary judgment. Fair notice defense is going to be one. Is XRP a security is going to be another one. With the way that the schedule works out, I got a little more optimistic like Jeremy did. James Filan is a little less optimistic. I was more towards him, but then I let Jeremy kind of get me excited with his optimism. Basically, summary judgment, you've got the motion, your opposition, and your reply. Everybody's been following the case so much, they actually know how these lawyerly briefs work. But with the reply due, I think, mid-November-ish, or right before Thanksgiving, you know, I've had federal courts take a year to rule on summary judgment, so that is possible, although extremely unlikely because Torres likes to move fast. She's not going to want to get on the slow-moving motion list, which is March 31st, 2023. So it's very optimistic, but I think certainly possible for it to be decided, summary judgment to be decided before, you know, at the very end of December. I do think that's optimistic. I think much more likely sometime in February. So I give it 30% chance it gets done end of this year. And then I'd say, you know, a kind of an equal chance between January, February, March of 2023 it'll get decided. The fair notice ruling, by the way, just I'm so confident that Ripple will win that. I don't even lose any sleep over that. But you know, just everybody's got to remember, fair notice just means everything before is let go. So the judge could say Ripple did not have fair notice that these were securities, so nothing beforehand. But I'm ruling that XRP is a security, and now going forward, it's a security. So
that'd be pretty hard to do, right? If you're saying that everything before includes even up to present day, and now everything after is a security. Like,
no, that's exactly how it would go. So the fair notice defense is basically we didn't have we didn't have fair notice that this new technology could be considered a security, and the court could look. I think we'll look at everything, even the SEC coming out with different commissioner statements, you know, every other week. And they'll say, yes, Ripple didn't have fair notice. This was a new technology. And, you know, there's no reason at all for them to have known this. But now, you know, I've looked at everything, and guess what? And this is Judge Torres saying this, XRP is a security. So we're not going to punish Ripple.
She didn't say that, guys. She didn't say that yet. Just
This is, you know, this is just a bad case scenario where you can win fair notice and win the battle, lose the war. Yeah. So, you know, that is possible. And also it could go the other way where she does not even rule on fair notice because she says, I don't have to waste my time on fair notice, which will allow that issue not to have been decided by a federal judge. So the SEC can continue to go after other cryptos. The judge can say, I'm not going to rule, Judge Torres can say, I'm not going to rule on fair notice because XRP isn't a security. so I don't have to waste my time determining fair notice.
Well, I hope that for the whole crypto community and for just markets in general, that is a thing, because there needs to be something where someone can come walk into the SEC and not be lead generation for them and just have a lawsuit slapped because they're actually trying to earnestly figure out something. Like, that is a huge hole in our system in general. If people can just walk in and be like, and then like 6 months down the line, oh, here, you're served.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I mean, it's just, for my background, for if anyone wants to know, has been process improvement for honest. Well, I've done help with global companies and small businesses, and I just don't understand where a process like as obvious as this is just missing from our entire government. Like, it's just kind of like, why? I ask a question, I get an answer. I don't, you may have to, it's the government. You may have to fill out a ton of forms. You may be moved from person to person if someone doesn't know, which I guess is essentially what they're doing, but you don't expect to be slapped with a lawsuit for earnestly coming and asking a question. But anyway, sorry, a little angry getting out.
The last part of Eric's question, can they push it even farther away? They could push it farther away by asking for more extensions. I don't think the court's going to grant any at this point because everything's so far out in notice that, I mean, what is either party going to say if they want an extension? Hey, we just didn't manage our time well. So I don't think any of that is going to get pushed out. The issues, fair notice will be part of the summary judgment. And, XRP security will be part of summary judgment. And then, there's going to be some jurisdictional issues about XRP being sold. Was it even sold in the US by Chris and Brad? Those are all going to be in a giant summary judgment motion. It'll be interesting to see if either party fights on redacting things, because a lot of the things that Hinman didn't say or said or forgot or can't recall in his deposition, is going to be a key part of the motion. And I wonder if they're going to still move to redact some of it, or if they're going to let it come through.
Yeah, we haven't heard on all those emails that we've been fighting for forever. The judge hasn't denied them. The judge is looking at it currently, right? That's the step that we're on?
So real quickly, it's Judge Netburn. She's the magistrate judge, to remind everybody, kind of like the lower level judge before the district court judge in these big cases. Not every federal case has a magistrate, but she ruled on deliberative process privilege, and then the SEC came back and said, okay, you did that ruling. Now, by the way, everything's attorney-client privilege. So she's ruling on that now. Mm-hmm. SEC responds tomorrow. I think that it'll take the Judge Netburn, at least 2 to 3 weeks to reply, to get an order. If the SEC really wanted to string things out, they could file a motion to reconsider that. I mean, it's so ridiculous that they already did it once. You would think that, they're not going to do it again, but they could. I wouldn't put it past them at all. And then they get another 2 weeks to object to Judge Torres, the district court. I got to reread what the procedures are there. I don't know if they automatically get to do briefing, or it's just, hey, will you reconsider this, Judge Torres? And she can either say yes or no. So bottom line is, I don't think that issue gets to Judge Torres until July. And then, I think she will rule on it pretty quickly, but the SEC's got options. They can try and take it out to the Second Circuit. They've got a way to potentially delay it another couple months or even a year, depending on what the Second Circuit says.
This brings up even more questions, but again, I'll delay them until someone else asks. It's probably in my head anyways, in a better way. But of course, Eric says thank you for all that you've done, and appreciate you having the back of the XRP army.
Yeah.
And then,
Eric, I'd be happy. I'm looking at this on my screen. I'd be happy with $2 as well. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Wouldn't we all, especially in this market? So next we have Tim. Hopefully. Hi, Tim. It seems to me that if Ripple could prove that the lawsuit itself was spurious, I don't know what the word is, the Torres could decide to drop the suit. And
spurious is like lacking a
okay.
a legitimate motive.
Got me there, guys. Cool.
I don't know how to fix anything, but I do know what a lot of words mean. That's what I can bring to the table as a lawyer.
Appreciate it. I'm trying to get to the question here. I guess that's, oh, he put in 1 of 2 the first time. So I understand why you were asked to drop the lawsuit, but if it appears that the conflict of interest by Clayton and Hinman aren't going to be raised in the SEC case, and then it goes on, this is 2 of 2. It seems to the Ripple lawsuit.
Yeah, so I don't know how much, I don't think Ripple Labs is going to get into the conflicts that much because there's no real point to it for them. Well, I'm not going to say there's no real point to it, but it's not super significant for what's going on between the SEC and Ripple. It stinks. It's disgusting. It's corruption. But, you know, the SEC, regardless of those conflicts, regardless if there are real conflicts or not, I'm giving the SEC the benefit of the doubt here. You know, the SEC still did file the lawsuit and is still pursuing it. So it's not like, you know, even if there was a huge conflict of interest, the SEC knew about it and then they decided to do the lawsuit anyway. That doesn't change their ability to still go after any company, even if previous government people at the SEC were horribly conflicted. That does go into the lawsuit against those 2 personally, which again, that's just sitting in the back burner, you know, ready to go when the time is ready. So it's just not, they might kind of play at it a little bit, the Ripple lawyers, but it's not, it doesn't affect the case against Ripple Labs as much as it does against XRP users, you know, which was the premise of my lawsuit, you know, which is, I didn't even bring up Ripple at all in that whole complaint. Again, it was just the XRP network users, which is, hey, you know, the premise being is that Hinman and Clayton went after the network, you know, intentionally to destroy the network to the benefit of their clients at these law firms that they were still getting paid for and essentially working for while they were at the SEC. So that's a much bigger deal for that type of claim than it is for Ripple SEC. If that, hopefully that makes sense.
Yep. And we'll give some time for more questions to come in as well. But I do want to stop and give people an opportunity to win some Zoj, and I've got 1 billion Zoj for the person who gets the answer right. So now is the time if you want to enter into the chat your answer of exactly what was my favorite TV show in the 90s. It's a cartoon, and because that's just where I was then, and I still remember it fondly to this day. And maybe I'll hear some of your favorites as well. And if I don't get a good the right answer, I'll just keep giving hints until we get it after each question. And
I got a question. Is it a Saturday morning cartoon or a weekday cartoon?
It was both at different times.
Okay.
Like, I mean, but you know, gosh, it's gonna put me on the spot here. It might have been Saturday morning whenever it first started. Yeah, it might have been. So I guess that's your first hint, guys. So yeah, there's it's what it is. I didn't have cable, so if that helps, helps narrow it down for you back then. But we'll hide this question here, and then we'll move on to the next question while we get those responses coming in. And the next one is, so basically the main part of which will force the SEC to settle is the fair notice. Is the question, and because they can't follow any other coins anymore. That's the question.
I think that there is only one thing that's two things that are going to force the SEC to settle, and I don't think it's fair notice. So why is it not fair notice, in my opinion? Well, Ripple, and you know, so before I did plaintiff's work where I represent injured people, I used to work at a very big law firm, the same type. It wasn't the same firm, but it's the same type that the Ripple lawyers are from. And you know, this was at the very beginning of my career, so it's not like I was some big time partner. I was a grunt associate in the basement doing document review, you know, hours and hours a day. But the thing is that all these public pleadings all these pleadings are public. You see James Phelan show them to us all the time. you can now, any coin that the SEC goes after will argue, if as long as their attorney's not committing malpractice, the fair notice defense. You saw a library do it. And so the $1 million pleadings that Ripple paid their attorneys to do are now free. Not necessarily free. It costs like 20 cents to download them per page, but those are all free. So that is something that every single coin can at least file. Now, if the SEC loses fair notice, that hurts even more, if there's a settlement before that's decided. But if there's the thing I just don't think is that's forcing the SEC to settle, because every other coin can still make that argument. And they've got a great brief to make that argument and a great set of facts to make that argument. So it just doesn't seem like the SEC gains that much by settling for less than they want because of fair notice. And honestly, I wouldn't even settle if I was Ripple for fair notice. I mean, I would if everything was else going to go my way, but why at this point? It's been so long. They could have settled on that a long time ago. I think the only 2 points where there is going to be a settlement, 3 points. One is political. If someone somewhere goes, that's a lot more powerful than Gary Gensler says, okay, this one's over with. Time to settle it, whatever, you get it done right now. We just never know if that's going to happen. So it's a very realistic theory, but it's not one that we can kind of control, guess, predict. The second one is this expert witness issue. Judge Torres, I had a little thread about this as well on my Twitter feed, but Judge Torres, the original summary judgment schedule proposed by the parties had expert witness motions and summary judgment motions at the same time. Same motion, same opposition, same reply date. And Judge Torres, and these are motions to strike experts. So basically saying, Ripple's expert can't testify because of these legal reasons. The SEC's expert cannot testify because of these legal reasons. And so in this case, as to whether XRP is a security or not, is going to be critical with expert witness reports. In my medical malpractice cases, I've got a doctor saying this doctor fell below the standard of care because he should have looked at this lab and ordered this test. The opposing party will say they have their own doctor that says nothing about the labs was out of the ordinary, therefore the test didn't need to be ordered. And then it's, well, who does the jury believe? So the experts are critically important, and Judge Torres just put an insane scheduling order when she changed that for the experts. I mean, they're going to be working night and day, the attorneys, getting this one done. But I think the reason she did that is to give another settlement chance for the parties, because and some other attorneys were like, well, I don't think that she's going to rule on the expert issue until the same time as summary judgment. I don't think that's the case, because why would she have bothered changing those briefing schedules if she was going to hold them back at the same time? I think she takes the expert witness briefing, she rules on that before summary judgment is done, and Ripple's doing such a good job. I don't think it's gonna. I think the odds of it hurting them are low, but if it crushes Ripple, Ripple could try and link into a weak settlement. But if it crushes the SEC could be like, oh crap, we might lose this whole thing at summary judgment, and we might as well settle with Ripple now to get some money. Because I personally believe if SEC was like, give us $2 billion, even though they only sued for $1.3 billion, I think Ripple would pay it, because XRP would go so high. So if Ripple could get everything they wanted and just give $2 billion to the SEC, I really think they would. And I think if the expert motion issue, it hurts the SEC a lot, that's another really likelihood possibility of settlement. And then the last thing would be these emails. If Torres orders them produced in July, and the Second Circuit does not take the appeal, if the SEC appeals to the Second Circuit and the Second Circuit's like, we're not going to hear this, Judge Torres' rule is final, that's another thing I think the SEC could get rid of, say we got to settle, because after doing what I've done in the big law for so long, I mean, I can tell you with 99% confidence that all of those emails and drafts are things like, hey, Bill, why are you only mentioning these two coins? Like, what about, again, this is 2018, what about Litecoin? What about Cardano? What about all the other coins in the top 10, at that time? Like, it doesn't make any sense that you're only saying Ethereum and Bitcoin. Doesn't seem like XRP is a security. It doesn't seem like Litecoin's a security. And, he's saying, well, you're probably right, but let's just focus on these two because they're the biggest market cap. In other words, there's no reason at all why he's doing this. And it would just become more and more clear. We had more evidentiary support for what we all pretty much know, which is, he was dirty, trying to do this for the benefit of his clients.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who looks into this case and is like, oh yeah, the government's doing its job. Like or these guys aren't dirty. Like it's the most obvious thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. And maybe I just haven't been looking. Maybe it's just the one thing that, the light got shined on for me. And maybe you've seen a lot more in your experience. You're like, this is nothing new. But
yeah. Well, that's the thing is that, we're all dialed into this, the XRP community, and we're like, oh my gosh. And it is true that this is an egregious case of conflict of interest and corruption. But, to be fair, this kind of similar stuff, I mean, it's a new technology, so there's a bigger area for them to get away with it. But I mean, at the SEC, this happens all the time. I've had a couple, there's a great article by Matt Taibbi. If you just type in like Judge Rakoff, Rakoff, and Matt Taibbi and SEC, this is back from 2010 where the SEC and some big banks, I forget which ones they were, Citi, JP Morgan, I don't know which one, but that crew, and it was like, okay, we're all letting them off and they're paying $200 million or some obscene fine. And the judge was like, no, I'm not going to approve this because for everything you alleged, now you're just letting them off with a slap on the wrist. That doesn't make any sense. And then the SEC and the banks are just like floored. They're like, what? What? Come on, we do this all the time. We pay the fine, we make 90 cents of every dollar we're doing the fraud on.
Yeah.
Rubber stamp this thing. And it went crazy. Like that judge had to get his own attorney because they took it up to the next level saying this judge doesn't know what he's doing. He has to approve this. We're all agreed. And, so that happens. I mean, the FDA, you see things where they're going to drug companies all the time. I mean, really, It does happen all over the place. And, I, as an American citizen, used to think, well, our country's a little bit better. We're a lot better than all these other countries. But, just as I've been getting older and older, I'm kind of coming to that sad realization that, well, it's not. I mean, maybe they're better at getting away with their corruption. But,
right.
I mean, it's happening all over the place.
Yeah. It's definitely been eye-opening. And I think that, who knows what'll change it, or maybe this will bring light to it. We'll have better restrictions or people will just hide better, either or. But hopefully we'll see at least some justice done in this process. And by the way, guys, you guys are guessing wrong here. So I've got to steer you in the right direction. In terms of this cartoon deal. And please make sure to put in some questions for Fred here too. I see some of you have asked a few and I'll get to those in a second. But no, it's not TMNT or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's not Animaniacs. It's not Batman. None of the ones that have been listed so far. But it's good to know what you guys are into. And no, I was not watching South Park back then. I've watched a few episodes now. But no, wasn't that. And I'll give you a hint. There were 4 main characters, but it was not the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we'll keep going here.
See,
You can't guess. You can't guess.
Oh no, well, these are all guesses that have already been made. I was thinking of X-Man when you said, when I saw the thing on Twitter. I love Ren and Stimpy, South Park.
Yeah.
Weekday, I just remember coming home and it was the DuckTales, Tailspin. And there's 1 or 2 that haven't been guessed, so I won't say anything. But that was just a glorious 2 hours of cartoons that I remember in the 90s.
It's true. And a lot of those are, like, Spider-Man was great for me. Like, I'm into Marvel, I'm into DC, but a I'm not going to say whether right now that was one of them, but we'll move on here. Let's go into the next question from Eric again. Judge Torres has a final say if it gets appealed to the Second Circuit? ?
So I keep telling myself I have to look into this. From what I don't, the way it normally works is once a district court judge, a federal district court judge, gives you a decision, if you don't like it, you appeal it to the circuit court. And in this case, it's the Second Circuit. So that's how it normally goes. I think either James Fillon or maybe something else I read is that there's a procedure where they have to, the SEC, if they lose to Torres, would have to ask Judge Torres to let her, to give her blessing for them to appeal to the Second Circuit. So she can deny that, but that's just one avenue. I mean, you can always go around her with the normal avenue called an interlocutory appeal. It's like an appeal when the main case is still pending, which makes sense because this is a side discovery issue. So they'll be able to appeal it to the Second Circuit. But basically, if the Second Circuit sees that Judge Torres was asked and said no, that hurts the SEC. If Judge Torres says, yeah, sure, go ahead up and appeal it, then maybe they'll be like, all right, well, maybe we should listen to it. So that is important to see kind of how the procedural posture is when it gets to the Second Circuit. There's just no doubt in my mind that the SEC would try and appeal it to the Second Circuit if they lose. I mean, there's just no stopping them in terms of delay in this case. I'm just 100% believer that this is all delay from the SEC. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense. Ripple will pay them a lot of money if they got the clarity that they want. I'm hopeful. My 70% probability is Torres rules in favor of Ripple. SEC tries to appeal. Torres says no. They appeal anyway through a different route. And Second Circuit says, we're not going to hear this. And then boom. And then it's over. And that's July-ish. And then we have, that's the first real possibility for settlement, in my opinion.
Gotcha. What are the chances, just based on your previous, actually, I'm going to hold off a second. No, it's none of those guys. And just to give you another hint, it's not DC or Marvel related. All right, now back to the main topic. What are the chances that if they do settle, that the U.S. government takes XRP as payment for the settlement?
I think that's a very realistic possibility because the SEC just cares about money. They don't care about the retail investor. They care about their corporate overlords. And I say this because everybody remembers Bernie Madoff. Well, let me even go further back to the I actually can't remember which came first, the financial crisis or Bernie Madoff. But just so everybody knows, this is before I got more popular on Twitter. I had a couple of tweets on there, but during one of those crises, either the mortgage one in 2008 or Bernie Madoff, the SEC was literally caught with employees there watching all sorts of porn on the computer at the SEC, like Pornhub accounts, like spending hours at work, looking at porn. Wow. Like that's the SEC. And it just seems like it kind of trailed off into nothing. Like nobody was ever held accountable. I don't know if that's true. I tried looking into it. I mean, I didn't spend hours and hours, but you can just Google or search engine. I don't like saying that, but you can just type into a search engine SEC, porn problem, and it's from 10 years ago. It'll come up. With Bernie Madoff, I think there's a Netflix thing that came out where the guy was like, nobody's listening to me while I tell them, how terrible this thing is, and here's why the SEC case that John Deaton has in his back pocket. So. Just so everybody remembers, he's filed an intervention motion in the SEC case. So he's kind of doing the same thing. He's got 67,000 people ready to sue the SEC after this case is over with. There's no lawsuit yet. He is just kind of involved and has a say on behalf of all the XRP holders in the SEC Ripple case. But there's a case from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals that says that the people that got screwed by Bernie Madoff filed, and the judge, in their opinion, says, I'm sorry to everybody that got screwed over by Bernie. I see how terrible the SEC was. I see that they missed every single red flag. I see that they actually were told about the red flags and not only not just didn't miss, but just looked at it, said yup, and set it to the side. But even with all of that, you can't sue the SEC because of the immunity principles. So it's a big hurdle to get over. Again, it's not that it's never been done before, so you don't lose hope, but everybody should know that going into it. Same thing with the case against Hinman. So to actually go back and answer the question, all they care about is money. And, it's not hard for them to know, hey, if we settle and we say it's not a security, that's going to juice XRP overnight. We get paid in XRP. We get, Ripple to give us 1 billion XRP. We're running our own nodes, for crying out loud. We get Ripple to give us 1 billion XRP. It goes to $2 tomorrow. Now we've got 2 billion. It goes to $10. Now we've got 10 billion. That's more than they collect by far, in a couple of years. So I totally could see them taking a piece of that from XRP as a settlement.
Yeah, and especially if they, and after all that, would be the most ironic thing. At least that's the word. I can't. Audacious. Like, I don't know if there's, you'd have better words than I do, but the fact that they're suing it and then they take XRP as payment, wouldn't that be the bow on this entire pile of crap that we've had to go through?
Yeah, I'm a grammatical stickler. Ironic's not the right word. I don't know if I don't know if fortuitous or serendipitous is, but your endpoint, which is 2.5 years of saying XRP is a security. Oh yeah, we'll take it for payment.
Right.
Because they'll just say something like, well, it was a good faith shot. We didn't really know if it was a security or not. That's why we did the lawsuit. Can't blame us for trying to protect investors. Not a security, we'll take it for payment. Case closed.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry, I got to ask one more question. And again, no, it's not Powerpuff Girls, guys. Thank you. Whoever had the bravery to say that, but that was not the case. I mean, Powerpuff Girls was good, but Dexter's Laboratory I thought was much better, but it's neither of those. But that being said, that would just be the perfect ending to this. But Ripple has been delaying along with them. We see the motions come out and it's a mutual push. And can you explain that a little bit? Why that is? Does the SEC just have Ripple, for lack of better words, by the balls here? And they're just, what's going on with that? Because we think Ripple will be like, no, let's do it sooner.
So that because there are two things that Ripple's done, their legal team, that I've been a little disappointed in. That actually has nothing to do with the merits. It was waiting to the end of the moment to file the Larson-Garlinghouse answers to a complaint that was filed back in December 2020. They could have had that locked and loaded and ready to go as soon as the motion was over. And then this court piece thing, there's no reason that they can't have something ready to go to file a motion for attorney's fees, this back and forth. I think, and I'm going off of my experience, which I think is pretty valid and can offer some insight. But, there are, one of the reasons Ripple, and obviously it didn't matter that much in this situation. It didn't matter as much as Ripple was hoping. But, one of the reasons Ripple went with this law firm was Mary Jo White, Andrew Sersney, Matt Solomon, all people that were high up at the SEC, thinking, we got these SEC guys, they can talk to their buddies, we can kind of do a big bank deal, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, where it's all right, we'll pay the fine, we're good. That didn't happen, which makes me, and this is still dragging out, even after all these incredible losses from the SEC, which just makes me realize this is all a sham, but not in Ripple's favor. A couple of YouTubers have been it's all a show, all the world's a stage, which I think it is all the stage in this situation, but against Ripple. You know, we're doing this for our big bank buddies. Ripple's not in the club. And I could be wrong on that, but it's so elaborate, and there's so much of a risk of things going against the SEC once you let a case go out this long, which is why I think it's for the benefit of the big banks, and just to hurt Ripple. But this case will end, but the law firm the 3 or 4 law firms that Ripple and Chris and Brad have retained will move on. And they want a lot of other clients who have problems with the SEC to hire them, to pay them $1,000 an hour, to pay them. I would guess that Ripple's paying maybe $2 million a month in legal fees. If I had to, I've kind of done backhand math based on what I know of when I was at these types of firms. So that's a lot of money that these firms make defending against the SEC, and they can't go. I don't think they've held back anything legally, so I don't want to give that impression. But
it's to their advantage for it to go longer.
Well, one, it's to their advantage to go longer to make more money. But two, you can't make you can't be on the defense side, which is what those big firms are doing, or represent huge companies and be absolutely antagonistic to the SEC, because the SEC is vindictive and they can say, oh, Cleary is on this case. Remember how they, made us look like absolute fools in the Ripple case? F them. Make their lives as hard as possible on this. Let's assume, and that's going to hurt their bottom line. So if they can't go, I mean, they shouldn't. I mean, they've got self-interest, not to go balls to the wall against the SEC. So for me, as a plaintiff's attorney, I have no problem doing that at all, because I can't stand these government agencies that just don't give a you-know-what about the common person. And I don't represent companies that are going to be back and forth in front of the SEC. So I can go and I can file a complaint. That's probably ill-advised, where I'm literally name calling, Bill Hinman and Jay Clayton. In hindsight, that was a bad idea, but I can tweak them and do all that, because I don't have to worry about some huge multi-billion-dollar client that I'm going to represent before the SEC. So they have to play nice with the SEC to some extent. You saw that frustration come out a little bit in one of Solomon's responses the other day, like, oh, this attorney-client privilege motion is the 7th iteration of this. Come on, Judge. And, I'm reading between the lines, and he's kind of like, you got to be effing kidding me that we're still doing this. But they just weren't able to they weren't able to leverage their SEC cachet to get this case settled like they normally would in almost every other case, which again tells me the big players are saying, you cannot let this Ripple case go through, at least not yet, or for whatever reason, but somebody's got their foot on the SEC's back saying, you keep doing this, because the losses the SEC's racking up are embarrassing. The attorneys at the SEC should be embarrassed about them, and yet they keep doing it. And so why would you do that when you could easily settle and get a couple $2 billion?
Wow.
A little depressing. Sorry to just lay that down on everybody, but
no,
I was trying to keep it real.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes into the next question, which I think you talked about a little bit. It's from Curly Bill here. Do you think the SEC is deliberately dragging its feet to hold XRP back so that it's still at a low price for mass bank adoption when the U.S. adopts ISO 20022 in 2024 and the new financial system is in place?
So I think it's a yes on deliberately dragging it out. I just think there's no question that they're trying to do this because they could get a settlement whenever they want and extract a lot of money out of Ripple. But Ripple's not going to do that without them saying XRP is not a security. And so for whatever reason, someone's telling SEC, you got to make sure XRP is a security. And if you can't, then you make it go all the way and delay it as much as you can. I don't know if it's all the world a stage in Ripple's favor, which I think is dangerous because, you know, you're letting a judge decide. You're taking it out of the control of the SEC to come up with their own settlement. Now, again, granted, judge cannot all of a sudden rule out of the blue, this case is over. So, you know, they've got a fuse at least until December 2022, where it could get dicey that the judge could, you know, take it out of the SEC's hands. But, you know, if you are, you could definitely be suppressed. I mean, this is suppressing the price. So they could be with their bank buddies saying, hey, we're all in this together. We've all got our contracts lined up with Ripple. You know, just keep dragging this out. We're finally shaking out the last hands. That's totally plausible. I don't have that in my higher probability scenario, but it's definitely plausible. I think the banks are just so greedy that they want to get all the money for themselves. They don't want Ripple to be part of the club. ISO 222 is real interesting. I've got to do a little more research into it. It is, you know, I know it's a standard messaging system, and I also put I didn't get into it at all, but I did mention on Twitter that I took this law school class once about global standards, and it was incredibly boring. I'm the kind of person that falls asleep when it gets too boring in class, but I learned about how crazy in depth this standard setting process is when you're doing global standards. And like, there are intense battles with certain companies and countries that want one standard to win out. And sometimes, you know, it's a draw. That's why you have like different plugs and electrical outlets in Europe as opposed to in the US. Those are two different standards for electrical outlets that just, you know, never got resolved. So that messaging system is a big deal. I just don't know how hard it is to actually be compliant. You know, I know like XRP will be, and there's a handful of other ones, but how hard is it really for any other crypto to become compliant? If it's really hard, that's a lot bigger deal for the ones that are. But if it's not that hard to change your code up a little bit, I don't see it as much of a game changer as it could be. So I don't know enough to answer that question. And to talk about the new financial system, I just think that the US is losing clout and that the new financial system is just being kind of put together by a lot of people outside the US. And they could be really talking with Ripple and trying to make it work. I just don't have a good read on how much the US is trying to fight this and cling to the system that they lead and control, or how much have they said in the background, okay, we'll put on this front that we're clinging to it. But yeah, in the background, we're with everybody. We're going to do the new system. XRP is going to be a part of it. I just don't know how that's going to shake out.
Yeah, there's I just forgot what I was going to say. Well, while I'm trying to remember that, I just want to say that none of the answers are correct, guys. And
another hint.
Yeah, I know. We're going to lay another hint out. One of the main characters' names was Eduardo. So I will give you that hint, and hopefully some people will do some Googling.
All right, so it's not, I was thinking, I didn't see it come through. I was thinking Rescue Rangers, but there's no.
No, but that was a good one too. That was 4 characters. So, yeah. I love me some Chip and Dale, but no, that was not the case. And just for you guys, is the reason I did this because I am a huge fan. I still listen to all these cartoon intros. Like, I don't like normal music, but I'll go back and listen to all these intros that bring back all these fond memories. And I know that makes me eclectic and weird, but it's fine because I'm on YouTube, so I can be that way, right? But when it comes to the ISO 2022, though, I was thinking about this as you were mentioning about, you know, all the stall tactics and everything. How much pressure do you think is mounting from the rest of the world honestly switching to using the system, being able to innovate quicker? Do you think the US will be innovated out of their own process? Because sure, they could say it's a security all they want, even if it might legally be. But if the rest of the world says no, what are we going to do? They're just going to try to keep pushing the dollar, even though, like, what do you think that outcome will be? Like, does that make sense? Like, the rest of the world says yes, and we say no. What?
Yeah, so, you know, for the longest time, it didn't matter what the rest of the world said. It's whatever the U.S. said goes. And, you know, again, especially when I was younger, I was uncritically, yay, America, we're the greatest, we're better than everybody. And, I'm a little ashamed. I mean, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the good things that our country has done. But I mean, there's just so much terrible, disgusting things our government's done. I like a lot of other governments where it's just, that's why I like crypto, because it's so decentralized. It just comes down to a person or community level. But I think America or the US still has some clout to try and fight this, because everything is still priced in dollars. You go online and hear about the euro dollar and all this stuff, and it's just at a tipping point right now, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know if the US is going to be able to cling to the system for a little bit longer, force everybody to get on board with keeping the dollar where it is, or if they're going to be able to, or if they're going to lose that fight, everybody else is going to be able to band together, say, yep, we don't care, you're not going to invade everybody, we'll just get our system around you. And I'm leaning towards the latter, even though on the one hand, anybody positioned in XRP or in crypto for that, good for you, because who knows which one is going to be, or which group of cryptocurrencies are going to be. But if it goes that way, you're set. But, that also means that there could be a huge crash for Americans and their standard of living. And you'll come out on top, but a lot of people are going to get crushed and be brought into poverty. So, I think, and I just think the elites in America, everywhere else, are kind of getting to that point where, like, we don't really care about any country. We just want to make sure our, elite jet setting lifestyle is going. So, there's something to be said for that. And you read about with Russia and Ukraine. Well, Russia said, all right, fine, we're sanctioned. You want our natural gas and our oil, you got to pay for it in our currency. And then everyone's like, we're not going to do that. And then all of a sudden you see Mario Draghi come out, who, used to be the ECB guy. I can't remember if he's actually the prime minister right now of Italy or not. But I mean, a super big power player in Italian politics and European politics. He comes out and says, guess what? All these companies already set up their bank accounts to transact in rubles. That day, everyone was like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not true. And then, once it was out there, they were like, oh, crap. He let that one out. And then the very next day, I mean, this is only like going back 4 or 5 days, it came out, they're like, oh, yeah, they all did that. They all opened up their accounts in rubles. So that was a huge hit to the global status of the US dollar and kind of the global system we have currently. So I think it is chipping away. Everybody should know no reserve currencies ever lasted, a super long time in the grand scheme of things. So it's hard for the US dollar to keep hanging around. It's hard for any country to be the dominant superpower, for any long period of time. They all fall.
Yeah. How much more do you think we can print before it actually something takes? Like, because last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Printed 40%.
I think, why, if it keeps working, why deviate from that? So, my personal belief is, whatever happens now, there's at least another insane round of printing and giving people money that's still to come. And I think it's just going to still happen until it doesn't work anymore. So, I still think there'll be some printing left to come, something maybe even crazier than we saw when C19 was happening. But, when is that going to happen? It's when things start getting a little bit worse. We're going to get the money machine again, and then just get ready to exit when you can, because that could be the last one, or it might not. There could be 5 more rounds of that, to go. But, at some point it just won't work anymore. And that's when you want to be hedged.
Gotcha. Well, here's the real question of the night. This is from Curly. Do you think Gary Gensler looks like Gollum?
He kind of does. I think even though I think he probably actually looks more like Gollum than Monty Burns. I like the Monty Burns comparison better from The Simpsons. But
yeah,
I've seen Pennywise as a meme. I think that one may be even better. But yeah, you can see it. You can see it for sure, because it's the bald part of the head that Gollum has, that Gary's got, that really makes it worthwhile. I don't know if everybody remembers this, but I like whenever I like to try and do a dig on him, I'm like, nobody likes Gary Gensler. Rob Gensler doesn't even like Gary Gensler. And that's just, if you ever see me say that, he's got a twin brother.
Right?
Yeah,
Oh,
Gary
I
Gensler.
thought that was a joke.
No, he's got a twin brother, Rob.
Okay.
And I just
Poor
like,
guy.
yeah,
Oh
I
my
just like
gosh.
throwing that out there. I'm like, Rob Gensler doesn't like Gary Gensler.
Poor Rob.
Yeah.
All right. I hope he's a better dude than Gary.
He is.
Okay. He's not in the SEC. He chose a different path.
Yeah.
All right. Captain Planet, no. Also a good choice. Hoping for a reboot. And since I'm going on here, let's just go. I'm going to make it really easy. Extreme was in the name. And at Street Sharks, I also saw, which I like, but that was not it. But Extreme was in the name. So next question here. Can the Federal Reserve or IMF say the SEC or court dropped the lawsuit? We decide to use XRP as a national currency, which doesn't make much sense to me because it's kind of a bridge currency deal. Or what if we decide to use XRP as a national currency or CBDC bridge currency, which is okay for the lawsuit ends. So
if I'm following that right, the U.S. is heavily involved in both the IMF and the World Bank, so they got a huge say. So I don't know the power structure there if the U.S. could unilaterally say, we don't care what you want about XRP. We're fighting this to the bitter end. But it's certainly possible that Federal Reserve or IMF can say, there's always this power struggle with these government entities. So I don't have the background, I don't have the connections to know exactly who's going to come out on that. But there are always power plays going on behind the scenes, and it is not impossible, and it's not, I would say, it's anywhere between a 20 to 50% probability where if that were to happen, Federal Reserve or IMF to say, listen, we're going to go ahead and use XRP and just end run around you, that the XRP would fold. That's totally, that's not a ridiculous thought. Who knows if it's going to happen or not. So, if that were to play out, IMF could say, we want to have, they could go with Ripple. They could have an agreement for, 10, 15, 20 billion XRP. Tell the SEC, hey, just so you know, in summer 2023, we're going to make this announcement. You do what you do, SEC, but this is what we're doing. And then, the SEC is just going to lose face or lose power in that situation. And so they'd be like, all right, well, let's just get our money and bounce out of this. So it's possible. I don't have a good read on it to say how probable it is.
Gotcha. I'll need some more cartoon guesses in the chat, guys. I'm not seeing any more. So I'll ask this question real quick before we move on to the audience next one. The executive order. Let's say, is that what you were talking about earlier whenever you talked about like someone higher up basically saying, hey, like kill this or, end it, tie it up?
It's not the executive order. The executive order, was kind of like, it was telegraphed, and a lot of other YouTube personalities called it right. That they called it that. I mean, because it was telegraphed. It's not going to have anything specific. It's just going to be read up and study on it and give us a recommendation. Now, why it was helpful was it said, SEC, we want you to tell us what your role in all of this is, along with, and then there were like 3 or 4 other entities that were listed, Treasury, the CFTC, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 more. So that is just going to trigger, bureaucrats going back and forth with a draft agreement of this should be covered under our jurisdiction, this should be covered under your jurisdiction. They'll be fighting about it, there'll be deals about it, and then all it is a report. So even if it came out really one-sided, then it depends on what the senator, what the president or whatever administration at the time. Well, I mean, it'll be the Biden administration by the time it comes out. Are they going to just rubber stamp it? And that just means, are they going to come up with executive orders based on that? Are they going to try and turn it into legislation? So it's just, it was good in the sense that the executive order wasn't crypto is bad, figure out a way to kill it. It can be good, it can be bad. Tell us, who should be regulating this? So it was definitely favorable in that situation. But in terms of specific, policies that are coming forth, we're just not going to know. I think, like, for example, Gensler, one of his biggest backers is Senator Warren. And if all of a sudden, for whatever reason, she gave him the shoulder tap and was like, you got to drop this Ripple thing. That's one of his last main backers. Maybe not his last main backer, but that's a huge backer for him to lose. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, but like, say that were to happen, I could see him shoulder tap everybody, all the lawyers, and be like, okay, wrap this up. So that's one thing to take heart in, is this could be settled at any given moment. One, from the parties just constantly going back and forth in negotiations, which they are doing just behind the scenes. But at any given time, for reasons we'll never know, the higher up power could say, okay, let's get this one over, and it could settle tomorrow.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Again, I don't see anybody guessing the contest, guys. If y'all keep guessing, I'll do your best. That's all I'll say, and I will make sure that you are taken care of.
JT, there was it wasn't a question, but I saw something from Joey that I would like to answer about a victory I've had as an attorney.
Wait, did I skip over that? Okay.
It wasn't a question, so it's maybe you didn't see the question mark.
Okay.
It was right before the last question you asked, or the last question you put up there.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Thank you. Absolutely.
So, one of the there's a lot of victories that I've had that are really satisfying. The general situation with all my cases is something terrible happened. Somebody, made a bad mistake. A lot of times it was negligent, but not purposeful. Sometimes it was purposeful. And they just don't want to admit any wrongdoing. And, you just have to fight a bitter fight to the end. And it's really sad, especially when, there's been deaths. But, at the end of the day, you can never, I tell every client, I'm never going to make you whole, but I can make your life a little bit easier with, you getting fair restitution, fair compensation. One of the big wins was against the VA, Veterans Administration. So that's suing the government. They were running a VA hospital. They had a veteran who was in his late 60s. He was married. He had an issue where he would get up at the middle of the night and he'd be a little confused, and it happened all the time. So his wife, they'd been married for decades, and she told the hospital, the VA, this is in writing everywhere. He gets up, he's unstable on his feet. He's a fall risk. He always gets up at this time period. And, you got to watch him. And he went back, to the hospital for some unrelated issues, just a normal checkup. He had to stay overnight. The first night they had a sitter, which is someone where if you're fall risk, they have somebody literally sit in there just to help you if you get up, if you're confused or disoriented. And then the next night he got up exactly like the wife said. So again, they knew it was going to happen. And then the next night, they just didn't have the staffing to have a sitter. They didn't, have the person show up. And that's what I knew, and that's what the evidence showed. But I was just fighting the government for like a year and a half. Like, it's not our fault. We didn't do anything wrong. Take, this 20,000 offer and just be happy. And, I was just relentless that I was like, I know you're lying to me. I will fight you in court as much as I can because you had a sitter night 1. You didn't do it on night 2. And I'm going to find out it's because, you told them not to show up or you didn't want to pay somebody. And, sure enough, after just like the Ripple emails, I went through like 3 rounds. I mean, it wasn't as bad because we're on 6 rounds with Ripple, but I went through like 3 rounds of a discovery battle, which again is why I know with a high probability of what those emails say because I've been through the process. I mean, they finally sent it out. I read it, I was like, then I just resent it back to them. And I'm like, all right, here's your last offer to settle at this number or else I'm going into the multi-millions. And I'm only offering this because the widow wants this to be over with. And we got it settled. And, one of the things that was just really compelling was, the widow. I mean, obviously they got to live a long life together, but they slept together in the same bed, obviously, for decades. And the husband, she just had some testimony where she always had trouble sleeping. And the one thing that calmed her down was, her husband stroking her back to sleep. And, once he was dead, that just, she just had the trouble falling asleep for the rest of her life. It was, and then she started having to go on pills to fall asleep, and it brought with it its own type of situation. So getting that kind of closure where she didn't have to worry about, paying her rent, or she could buy out the house and she could take her grandkids on things. I was just so happy for me to finally do that, especially after all that hidden stuff. And the thing that pisses me off so much is, I mean, the attorney on that case, why do they care if the VA paid, what the fair value of that claim was at the very beginning? Why do we have to fight it? It's because some bureaucrat told that bureaucrat, who's also owned by a bureaucrat, fight all these cases because our budget says we should. And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't.
Sorry, I went on that rant, Joey, but you teed that one up for me.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know what the motivation, right? So really appreciate that.
And that's why I went a little off the handle with my Hinman Clayton email. I mean, well, I'll say this: if you read it and don't have their disparaging names, I feel it's still a pretty good complaint. If you just took that part out and put the real names in, so it's not like it was a bad complaint in my opinion. I just went a little hard on the name calling, but I read everything on Friday when that first batch came out, and it was like, wow, this is even worse than we all thought. And I was just so mad the whole weekend. I was just working on this thing all day, every day to get it done. And then I filed it. So, that's the kind of thing that just drives me crazy.
Yeah. And us too. But you know the routes to take. So it's really helpful. At least you let it all out in a very focused fashion.
Yeah, the one thing I like to say, I answer every question on an AMA. There's like one question I haven't answered. It was when I did my first interview with Scott on XRP Army News, and someone asked, I forget who it was. It was like, I said somewhere that the names were a lot worse in my draft complaints, and I like to have a little key that I work on, like a Word file. And then I just Control F and change everything out. So for what I filed was actually 2 or 3 rounds of me being nicer than what it was. Now, I mean, originally it was a lot of expletives and all sorts of derogatory information. And when this is all over, I'll release that of what my original key was of everybody, but just not yet. That's the only thing I've never answered yet on an AMA.
Okay, you might read it. We might have you read it on the live after all this is over. And speaking of, someone is saying that they'd like to see you, Jeremy Hogan, James, and John all on a live stream on a YouTube. I would love to, of course, have them do it here. There's other YouTubers that are bigger, obviously. But yeah, if you can help me arrange that, that'd be great. Would love to get you all together to do an AMA at some point. But
yeah, that would be awesome. I've spoken to both of them before. Obviously, they're great people and have great integrity. And the nice thing is we all generally agree that this is a BS case and Ripple's on the side of truth and justice. But we have little disagreements as to what's going to happen, the timeline, how it's going to play out, and motivations and everything. But I mean, always on the same page. But that's what's so great about the community is that we're just not a community. XRP community isn't a community where like, what? You don't agree with me? Go screw yourself. It's like, oh, okay, well, I heard your opinion. It makes sense. That's plausible. I disagree. Or well, why do you say this or this? And I've been convinced to change my mind. I've convinced other people to change their minds. It's just not that kind of, I mean, tribalism you see with some of these other crypto projects or just, you know, politics in general. So it's just super awesome and encouraging.
Yeah. One last question, but before I get to it, I just want to say, guys, take one last stab at the cartoon, do your best, and then I will, if no one gets it, I'm going to give you this last hint. Janine was a side character in this cartoon at one point, and if that doesn't get it to you, you're not going to get it, and then in which case I will make sure that you guys are, I'm very thankful for the people that have stuck around, so just keep sticking around, but we'll make this the final question of the night. We're going to show it here. Would love to see, or wait. Nope, that was the one before. We're going to this one. Can the Federal Reserve or the IMF...
We already asked this one.
Oh, we did? I'm sorry. My bad.
Curly Bill's got one. If I'm looking at...
which one?
What is the longest that you think this case can be dragged out? I don't know if you want me to end on that one. That's a depressing answer.
It's okay. I will end up the depressing with, as long as they give me one last shot at the taking a guess at this cartoon. I will.
I've also got a few, I know we talked about it before I went on. I've got a few parting thoughts, a few kind of new little things I found out while I was getting ready for this. That
okay, that's right. We haven't hit that. So yeah, let's answer that the other question real quick about how long it could go on. Then we'll go into that real quick, and then I'll end it out.
All right, so Curly Bill, this is going to be depressing, but this can be dragged out very, very long if the SEC wants, and if Ripple wants, if they're on the losing end of summary judgment. So remember the Howey case. The Howey case is a seminal Supreme Court case. So what does that mean? That means that before the Supreme Court heard it, the circuit court heard it, and before the circuit court heard it, the federal district court heard it. You know, a Judge Torres, another set of judges, and then the U.S. Supreme Court. And that was in the 40s when things went a lot faster and there weren't nearly as many cases. So if the big fear with summary judgment is that a summary judgment means the court, if the court's going to grant someone summary judgment, they've said, I've looked at all these facts. There's no legitimate dispute of the facts. And because there's no legitimate dispute, I can say as a matter of law, this party wins. You know, the problem is that some judges, if there's even a question of a dispute, and so, for example, a huge dispute in the Ripple SEC summary judgments will be the experts. The experts will say, Ripple's experts will say X, and SEC's experts will say Y. Those will be contested facts. So the judge could say, you know what, I can't rule. I'm going to deny everyone's MSJ. I can't make a ruling because of these facts that you dispute, and we got to let the jury decide. So if that happens, then she's going to set a trial. Now, there hasn't been a trial set. So so she's not going to set the trial until, well, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure no trial's been set. So at the end of summary judgment, if she makes a decision in December, January, February, and says, I can't decide this because of disputed facts, we got to do a trial. Because of COVID and the delays it had when the courts were shut down, there are so many jury trials back to back to back. I can't see this very long jury trial, which would be at least a month, if not 2 months. I can't see it being scheduled until the end of 2023. And then, okay, so we've got, if it goes to jury trial, then you're end of 2023, maybe even later. And then if the SEC wants, they can say, all right, we're appealing this to the Second Circuit because of all these reasons. And then the Second Circuit will sit on that after briefing and everything. That'll be about another year before they do it. And if the SEC loses there, they can say, well, we got the Supreme Court we got to weigh in. And so if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. We are talking, and the SEC keeps losing everywhere. We're talking 2025. Everybody, that is the absolute worst case scenario.
Besides them, what do you call it? Dropping the case or withdrawing the case?
Well, they can't withdraw the case.
There's a word.
Best case scenario?
No, I'm saying that's the worst case scenario because we still don't have clarity if that's the case. So they drop the case. I forget the term. Sorry.
Well, they could try and dismiss the case, but they really can't. That's actually not a possibility because once you get so far in a lawsuit, as we are with Ripple, the SEC can't unilaterally say we're dropping the case. They have to get Ripple's permission. And even if Ripple was like, fine, let's just drop it, you can sue us whenever you want later, the judge still has to agree. And Judge Torres would be like, no, we're going forward. And obviously Ripple wouldn't agree either. So they cannot, that is not an option. The SEC cannot withdraw the case.
Good. Curly Bill says, sorry for asking, by the way.
Yeah, so, what I think is likely is I think, got to see what the motions for summary judgment say, but I think there will be enough for Judge Torres to rule on summary judgment. So I think she will rule. I don't think there's going to be a trial. I'd put it at a 70% probability that there will be case-ending rulings at summary judgment. So if that's the most realistic probability, that's when the SEC could start their appeal to the Second Circuit if they wanted to really delay it. That's when they would say, all right, we lost the summary judgment, so what? Now, again, so that takes us way down the line of delay. But I also think for the good news, to end on the good news, is that if Ripple wins its summary judgment, that the majority probability is that all the exchanges and everybody else says this is strong enough for us to relist XRP and to go ahead and kind of treat it. Well, we're going to treat it now as not a security until the SEC wins, because that's why there's so much more going on behind the scenes, is because there is literally nothing preventing Coinbase, Kraken, Binance US from listing and trading XRP, which is why you see Bitrue doing it, which is why you see Uphold doing it. Because there is nothing, and the SEC hasn't moved for an injunction preventing them from doing that. So I think a win at the summary judgment would allow all those players to be like, okay, SEC lost, we're comfortable. Our legal counsel has said, until there's a reversal of that, we're good. We're good to go with XRP. We're going to go ahead and deem it a non-security.
Gotcha.
I did, before I got a little more well-known with that complaint, I did have a Twitter back and forth with Jesse Powell at Kraken. No surprise he responded to me, but I was like, man, you really shouldn't have waved the white flag on XRP. And he said something along the lines of, it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth being in the crosshairs of the SEC because all they really get out of that is the loss of trading volume. And it's just, they don't want to be, especially they're going to IPO at some point, they don't want to be in the SEC crosshairs with that. I can't see the SEC letting Uphold IPO with that pending, because they're vindictive. They'll be like, oh, you're listing XRP. Well, you stopped that before. And I don't think they're ready to IPO yet, but I could see SEC being very vindictive like that.
Yeah. Well, before we get in tonight, and I know some people are heading out, we all been very, we have one more thing that you want to cover, and we're going to cover it, but everyone did their best tonight to try to win this contest, and I really appreciate your participation, and just to show my gratitude to my viewers and my loyal 8 who stuck around. I want to make sure that you guys are taken care of. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give each and every one of you 8 watching right now, a billion Zoj. All you have to do is put your Twitter handle inside the chat, so I can verify that it's you whenever I go back to, and only these 8, by the way, and I'll know who you are from the history. But put your Twitter handle inside of the chat, and then message me your address that you want me to deliver the Zoj to. Make sure your trust line is set, and I'll send you the 1 billion Zoge that I was going to give to the one winner. But the cartoon was Extreme Ghostbusters, by the way. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go check it out because it has one of the best intros that I think is out there. But that's just my personal opinion. But put in your so 2 things. Let me know your Twitter handle inside the chat, and then message me on Twitter. Just DM me there your address from that Twitter handle that you put in here, and that way I'll be able to verify it's you, and I'll send you the 1 billion Zoge. And thanks for sticking around as long as you have, and I hope you can continue because I think what we have here is Fred has here is going to really also interest you. But just want to say thank you real quick.
Yeah, just there's a couple of things that I am working on. A couple of things that I can't fully discuss because I want to have an element of surprise. But I want to, and this gets replayed, and also to the 8 that have been involved and been acting. If we can take on the SEC in a lot of different ways, the crypto community. And we can do it without touching the SEC Ripple case. So if you've got, if you're a holder of XLM, Algo, Link, Ethereum, I have this on my pinned tweet, and you're, you've got potential interest in leading the charge against the SEC. There's a couple of things we can do to really, literally throw a torpedo into this whole well-laden plan of the SEC. It'd be really fun, but it would be something that would need to be community funded, in order for me to put in a lot of essentially free time to do it. I'll give details as it gets a little bit closer. But if you are interested, just shoot me an email or a direct message on Twitter. That info is on my pinned tweets. What's interesting is there's a Coinbase class action right now against Coinbase for engaging in unregistered securities sales. It's also in the Southern District of New York. Different judge, not Torres. And I pulled that up, and the Coinbase lawyers, one of the best firms in the world they've retained, is trying to dismiss the case, for a lot of different legal maneuvers. But there's a very interesting little nugget in there that the lawyers are saying, hey, we don't have to argue this right now in this motion to dismiss, but just so you know, you can decide this, judge, without us even bringing up this topic. But just so you know, none of the coins that were alleged to have been securities by the plaintiffs are actual securities. And so there's 79 listed in the Coinbase class action, XRP being one of them. And so,
Wow.
Coinbase came out, staked that position in their motion to dismiss that these aren't securities. So it's a little roundabout way, but it's encouraging to see that they're not going to roll over on that. So I'll put that, I'll link that one in my Twitter so everybody can see it.
So let me just take this back now. So Coinbase delists XRP and then fights to say that it is not a security in a lawsuit.
Correct. They're lumping it in with all the other tokens, but the reason they're doing that, though, is they can't say it's a footnote in their filings. They can't say, well, every one of these but XRP is a security, because then they're screwed, because then they've already admitted in the lawsuit that at least one of the 79 the plaintiff is alleging is a security. So even though they delisted it because of the pressure of SEC, they don't want to get in their on their bad side. This was before the Coinbase IPO, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that it was before the IPO and they delisted. They wanted everything to be nice and happy with the SEC, but they are, if this, and I'll keep an eye on this lawsuit, but as it goes forward, if they survive the motion to dismiss the plaintiffs, they're going to have to prove that these 79 coins are securities, and Coinbase is going to vigorously fight to say these are not securities. So Coinbase will be helping out XRP in that process if they can, if they get that far.
Wow. So what does that give us good leverage or give us any more leverage in the case?
It's better public leverage. It's not it's not. Well, it would go kind of to the fair notice defense. I don't think it'll get that far. I don't think we'll have Coinbase making those arguments as to how XRP is not a security before summary judgment.
Okay.
In the Ripple case. In other words, I think in this one, in this Coinbase one, the motion to dismiss was filed. The response will be in June. The reply will be somewhere,
Well, the timing's kind of off.
July. And then if, it'll be over if they win the motion to dismiss. But if they don't, and then Coinbase has to go about defending that these aren't securities, that's all going to be happening. That will be happening right at the Ripple summary judgment stage. So it'll be interesting. It could actually, now that I think about it, it would have to be interesting. It would have to be, well, what do they file and what becomes public that Ripple could use, or the SEC, because the plaintiffs in this case are basically like the SEC saying these are all unregistered securities. And you're going to see that happen. Plaintiff lawyers are going to say, well, there's no clarity. SEC is very clear that everything's a security. So now we're going to start suing all these people. So it's becoming kind of an S show now with all the lack of clarity, that eventually what I think is going to happen is all the exchanges, all these industry groups are going to be like, man, we've seen it for whatever reason, they've been hating on XRP so long, but they're kind of going to see with all these lawsuits, like, all right, we really got to make a stand here because, it's just one domino after the other if XRP goes down as a security. So I think that'll happen too. I think we're a couple, 3 to 6 months away from that real coalescing of the industry in Ripple's defense.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, is there anything, it just kind of blew my mind with that, but is there anything else or that was on your mind or you wanted to cover?
Not off the top of my head. There's a couple of things happening, and nothing's happening in the Ripple class action in Oakland. Just so nobody forgot about that. A year before SEC sued Ripple, a plaintiff sued Ripple for the exact same theory. You're selling unregistered securities. The plaintiff's trial in that case is set for 2023. But, the plaintiff's attorneys wisely said, well, let's delay everything until the Ripple case comes out, because that's what you do if you're a plaintiff. That's also what shows why the SEC, this is such a fake case, because they're delaying everything. That's not what you do when you want justice. You move as quickly as you can. And the plaintiff's attorneys are like, why should we spend all the money on this case when the SEC is already doing it for us? True. And they recognize, hey, this is either going to be a huge winner case or it's a loser case that we're going to dismiss, based on the SEC Ripple outcome. And that's another thing. The same Ripple attorneys against the SEC are involved in that case in Oakland. So that's another thing that's complicating settlement. But the really interesting thing, I had it on my, I'm keeping an eye on, is there's some unknown parties that are objecting to the disclosure of Ripple SEC information in that Ripple Oakland case. And they're going to have to, the judge just made a ruling at the end of April in the Oakland case that they're going to have to file a public objection if they don't want the Ripple attorneys to disclose information from the SEC Ripple case to the Ripple Oakland case. Mm-hmm. And it'll be really interesting because I think that Hinman is probably one of those people, and I think the SEC is actually one of those parties that are objecting. I'm not sure, but I'm keeping an eye on it because any objections should be due anytime in the next 1 to 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see who's fighting disclosure on that one.
Interesting. Well, are you going to post about that whenever it comes out?
I will.
Okay, cool. Maybe we can have you back on again and do another one of these in maybe a couple weeks or a month or something, whenever some new developments happen.
Yeah, for sure. I love getting on and kind of explaining the whole process and putting in my 2 thoughts. It's always fun.
It's cool. Well, always looking to collaborate with people like yourself that are experts and can answer to it much better than I can. So, because you can give legal advice, I cannot, or financial advice, which this is none of, by the way. But yes, well, I do appreciate your time tonight, Fred. I need to get to family. And I do want to appreciate my online family here of the 7 people who have stuck around. Please don't forget to put your, what do you call it? Your Twitter handles inside of the chat here, so I know who you are whenever you are messaging me. Because if I try to do it the other way, then let's say if you message me on Twitter, for example, your YouTube name, I don't necessarily know if that's you because I don't have you telling me here. So make sure you put your Twitter handle that you're going to message me from in the chat before I end this, and then message me from it with your with your address that I can send you the Zoj from your Zum wallet. If you don't know how to set that up, I have a YouTube video for that, so go check that out. But thank you so much again, Fred. And again, hope to have you back out soon. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, everyone. And we're going to cut it here. We're out.
Adios.